What's up guys, my name is Andy. In this video, it's time for me to explain why my fender, my quarter panel looks all beat up and cracked up like this. It's a combination of two things that happened, and a lot of you guys have asked questions, in other comments, in other videos you put a comment about it or other places, and I kind of always dodge the questions and don't really answer them, and it's mostly out of embarrassment and in just some of the poor choices that I made with this car, and I think it's time to fully explain what happened. So the first part of this, which has more to do with the other side than this side, because this would have happened regardless, but when I bought this car, I never paid attention to the quarter panels and how they come kind of down, and they almost just come straight down. They don't swoop out like with a fender lip, kind of like the front fender has that distinct lip on there. The rear, the quarter panels have one, but it's not as obvious. And I didn't pay attention to that. I didn't look at it, and I think I was so caught up in buying this car that it didn't matter. I wanted this car so bad, and the price was right, and I didn't even look into it. Fast forward several months down the road, I had put these wheels and tires on. I had lowered the car with the mid-eye leafs in here to get this car lowered down, and the tires were rubbing just a little bit on the inside of the fender here, and I thought, okay, I'm gonna have to roll that edge a little bit to get this to clean up, and I have a fender roller, an actual fender roller, and I put that on here, and I started to roll it, heat the panel up like you're supposed to, and I started to crack this shell here, and I stopped with that one, and okay, figured, there's something going on with this. I'm gonna go to the other side and see what's going on. Did the same thing on the other side of the car. I went to heat up the panel and put the fender roller on there and start to roll the fender, and sure enough, that side cracked as well. And looking into it further, this is just full of Bondo. If you look at the pictures from way back when the guy that I bought this from, he bought this car and it was kind of a wreck, not a wreck, but it needed a lot of work. And you can see in the pictures that the fenders were kind of rotted out and it needed to be done. And I think what he did is he just patched this up with some Bondo and then painted over it. Whatever, it is what it is. So now I've got two cracked quarter panels that I can't roll the lip on, because this lip isn't even really, it's metal, but the way that it's set up, it's not, I can't roll this. So I left things alone. I figured, what, one of these days down the road, I'll replace, I'll cut this out and I'll replace this with the lip and everything that goes on there. I can do that down the road though. So then I had just got done doing the rear end on this car, the third member, and it was not too long after that I was doing something, and I had just putting these wheels on, and I went to torque them down, and I had a buddy with me here, and actually the same buddy that went with me to pick this car up. He didn't drive the car when we went to pick it up. He didn't drive it when we got it home. He had never driven this car, and it just never happened. Well, that day he was here visiting, and as I was torquing these wheels down, I remember as I was torquing the wheels down and they're clicking, I'm asking him, 85 foot-pounds sounds about right for these. Not that it was his job to answer that, or it wasn't his responsibility, but I was just kind of confirming that was the right amount. That's what I'd done on all my cars in the last 20, 30 years, that was what I had used. And so as I'm clicking these, I knew that they were clicking. I knew that they were tight. And I asked him if he wanted to drive, and he said sure, and this is the first time he'd driven the car. Well, I had changed a lot, since then, since when we bought the car. So it was kind of an upgrade from what he had seen the car at. But anyways, we head down the road, and we're about ready to get on the highway, and I noticed the back end of the car just kind of feeling squirrely a little bit. I'm sitting in the passenger seat. You know, I'm talking to him about the car, and the back end just feels a little loose, but it could be just, I never sit in the passenger seat, so I don't know what to, look for. When you're driving, it's a whole different experience. So I noticed that, and we get on the highway and, get up to speed, and each time you shift, the back end just kind of feels like it's really loose. And in my head, for a split second there, it reminded me of my previous Mustang that I had, where one of the brackets on the leaf springs was missing, and so allowed the leaves to split like this and come apart, and it allowed the back end to be loose on that previous car. And I upgraded the springs, and that problem went away and everything was good. Well, with this car, that's kind of what I had in my head, that it felt like the same exact thing, but I had just replaced these rear leafs. So I knew that they're brand new springs, that shouldn't be it. So I told my buddy, downshift, do it again, do what we just did, and I want to see if I can feel or hear or tell what's going on in the back, because the car just felt really weird. He shifts down, and we go, and right then we hear this bang, and the back of the car drops down on the ground, and the car's doing this kind of stuff, and I'm telling him immediately pull over. He knew what to do. He knew to pull over, and we stopped the car, and I quickly get out. I want to know what's going on, what happened, what just happened to the car. And I come around, the passenger side, I was sitting over there, that was fine. I come around to this side, and this is when I noticed that the tire was sitting up inside the fender, and the drum was sitting on the bottom of the wheel well. First, let me clear up, this was not my buddy's fault at all. This had nothing to do with the way he was driving. It wasn't his fault at all. This was purely my fault, and I'll explain a little bit more of that in a minute. He just happened to be the unlucky guy that was driving. In fact, if anything, I'm glad that it happened when it did, because the next time I was planning to drive the car was not that day. I was just going to leave it in the garage, and I was going to drive it to work. And that would have happened on the way to work, and I would have had nobody with me, and it would have been horrible, and it would have been a lot worse. Probably because I'd have been stupider with my driving, and it would have been a lot worse. Anyways, it was my fault, 100% my fault. You guys need to know that. So the tire is tucked up inside the wheel well here, the fender, and the drum is sitting on the bottom of the wheel, and you can see that it was gouged inside there. Actually, right before that happened, I remember as he shifted, I remember looking over at him, and I see something fly past him, past the window, split second right before we heard that sound and the car fell on the ground, essentially. That was a lug nut that was flying off of the car. I don't know where it went. It was gone, but there was no lug nuts on the car at all. And in fact, one of the studs was sheared off, and I'm guessing that was the last one that was holding on. And so thankfully we weren't too far from home. I called my wife to have her come, and actually took my friend back to the house to get the wrench and stuff like that, because it looks like I could put the wheel back on the car, because there's only one lug stud missing, but I needed lugs. So as we're waiting for her to show up, I start walking down the highway looking on the shoulder for lugs, and I found one lug miraculously way down the road from where we were at. And so then I took one off of each of the other 3 wheels, so now I had 4 lugs for this. It's okay, I only had 4 studs. Those all had 4 lugs on them, so it was fine. We could limp the car home, and we jacked the car up, put the wheel back on, used those lug nuts, torqued them down, and drove the car home at 10 miles an hour or 15, whatever, as slow as we could go, just on the shoulder of the road, just make sure. I don't know if there was any other damage. I don't know what else was going on. And get the car home and kind of start to assess. When that happens, I only took a handful of pictures. I wish I had taken more. I was just so focused on, what did I do to this car? What damage did I cause from all that? And really, it was a damaged wheel, a broken stud, and the fender. The other side, doesn't look this bad, but that was because of the fender rolling. So now they match. Anyways, so that was the problem of what happened here, why this is cracked and why it's so bad. You know, I got a new wheel, got a new tire. In fact, the tire, you know what, let me grab, I still have the old setup. So here is the wheel. As you can see, the back side of the hub is just chewed up because the studs on the axle here were just spinning on this, and this was tucked up inside the fender, trying to roll. The side of this quarter panel here is digging into the tire, taking chunks out of the rubber, big pieces of rubber. I mean, there was big chunks of rubber that was flapping on the side of the car and making black marks on the paint from the pieces of rubber that were flying off of this thing. From this side, everything looks fine, but from the back, you know, this whole rim is chewed up. Aside from this being chewed up, you probably could use the wheel and you probably could use the tire, except for there's a couple deep spots of where the tread had been gouged pretty good, and I don't know if it's worth the risk. You know, there's a big chunk taken out right down the middle here, way down to the bottom of the tread. It might be fine. I don't know, it wasn't worth it. I just went ahead and got a new wheel and put it on here. So, you know, that's really the big story about why I don't tend to show this part of my car very much. I intentionally crop the camera in a way so that it doesn't show this, because I'm still embarrassed. You know, this is my fault. In fact, let me show you what I think happened with this axle and why the tire came off. Let me jack the car up and I'll show you. So now that we got the wheel off, so what I had been doing, I had just got done doing the cylinder in here and replacing this stuff, and I went to put this drum back on the car. And what I did, so if you can see on here, there is a shoulder on these wheel studs, and it's just enough of a shoulder for when you put this drum on, you can offset it, and this catches on the shoulder. If I twist it a little bit, you can push it all the way back. I think what happens is I put the drum, this on there, and it caught on that shoulder. Then I put the wheel on, and then I torqued it down. And because this drum is catching on that shoulder, you can torque this down because it's pushing against the shoulder of that stud, and it's not going anywhere. It feels solid, and the torque wrench will click because you're tightening everything down. Well, you start going down the road, and this, you know, things start to move around. All of a sudden, that does that. Now you've got about 1/8 of an inch between where the drum was versus where it is now. That wheel is now loose, and none of those lug nuts are tight anymore. And I think they came off one by one until the last one is the one that we saw flying by the window, and the wheel just came off. And I am incredibly lucky that the wheel sucked up inside this fender here and was trapped by this quarter panel, and the wheel didn't fly off and hit somebody, that this thing didn't land on the ground and chew up the bottom of my car. I got incredibly lucky that this wasn't worse, you know, that this was the worst thing that happened to the car other than needing a new wheel and tire. So guys, this just a heads up. So on these drums, when you're putting them back on, just make sure that you fully seat these down and you don't catch it on that shoulder of the stud. That's obvious, and you wouldn't think, you would never intentionally do that. I just wasn't paying attention, and that is 100% my fault. So guys, that's just what I wanted to point out. I think it's a good opportunity to just give a kind of a PSA to everybody to make sure that they're careful with these drums. I don't want that to happen to you guys. I never would have thought that would have happened to me. If I'd have known everything I knew now, that won't ever be a problem for me again. And again, I'm lucky that we didn't lose control of the car and hit somebody else. You know, nothing happened to my friend, other than he doesn't want to drive the car anymore, and I don't blame him, but I really wish he would. This car is, I have done a lot to this car even since then, and this thing is a blast to drive now. I really wish he'd get back behind the wheel, but it is what it is. This thing now, I need to deal with this fender or this quarter panel. I need to deal with both sides. That's something that I'll have to do down the road. Maybe something like a winter project, because I got to cut quite a bit out of here, and then I got to paint the car. And I don't know what color this is. It's white, but it's not a Ford white. So I may just have to paint the car a whole different color. Anyways, I'll take care of that down the road. But guys, I just wanted to give the story about what happened with my car, why it is this way, why I haven't been talking about it, why I've been dodging the questions. And again, it's just out of embarrassment. This is my fault, and I don't know, I wish I would have been smarter and paid attention more with this car, and I wouldn't have had these problems. And I got really, really lucky that was the worst. This and that wheel is the worst of it. So anyways, guys, if you'd like the video, give me a thumbs up. And if you subscribe, I appreciate it, because it helps my channel out. And we'll see you in the next one.